The autumn wind whispered through the abandoned research facility's broken windows, carrying with it the musty scent of decay and forgotten secrets. Olivia Winters pulled her jacket tighter around her shoulders, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness like a sword. As an investigative journalist, she'd explored many derelict buildings, but something about this place felt different. The facility had been abandoned for nearly a decade, its existence carefully scrubbed from public records. But Olivia's sources had hinted at extraordinary research conducted here, experiments that pushed the boundaries of what humanity thought possible. She'd spent months tracking down its location, following a trail of mysterious energy readings and unexplained phenomena. Her boots crunched over broken glass as she made her way deeper into the complex. The walls were lined with empty offices and laboratories, their equipment long since stripped away. But it wasn't the surface level she was interested in. According to her research, the real work had happened underground. After 20 minutes of searching, Olivia found what she was looking for, a heavy steel door marked Sublevel B, hidden behind a collapsed filing cabinet. The electronic lock was dead, but her bolt cutters made short work of the backup chain. The door groaned open, revealing a steep stairwell that plunged into darkness. "Well, Olivia," she muttered to herself, "you wanted a story." She began her descent, the beam of her flashlight illuminating each step. The air grew colder as she went deeper, carrying a strange metallic tang that made her nose tingle. The basement level was a maze of corridors and sealed rooms. Most of the doors were locked, their windows revealing nothing but empty darkness beyond. But as she rounded a corner, something caught her eye, a faint, pulsing blue light seeping out from beneath a door marked, Containment Lab 7. Olivia's heart began to race. This was it, this had to be what her source had told her about. She approached the door carefully, noting that unlike the others, this one's security system still had power. A small keypad glowed faintly beside it. It took her several attempts with different code combinations she'd gathered from her research, but finally, the keypad chirped and the door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. The room beyond was mostly dark, save for the source of the blue light, a cylindrical pod about the size of a mini fridge, mounted on a pedestal in the center of the room. Olivia approached slowly, her camera at the ready. The pod was clearly of advanced design, its surface covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. But it was what she saw through its transparent front panel that made her gasp. Inside, suspended in a clear fluid, was a woman, or at least, something that looked very much like a woman. She was tiny, no more than 18 inches tall, with iridescent skin that shimmed with subtle patterns of light. Her hair floated around her face like liquid silver, and delicate, almost translucent wings were folded against her back. "Oh my God," Olivia whispered, lowering her camera. This was far beyond anything she'd expected to find. The being in the pod was clearly alive. Olivia could see her chest rising and falling in slow, shallow breaths. But something was wrong. Even in the dim light, Olivia could see signs of distress on the tiny woman's face. As if sensing Olivia's presence, the being's eyes fluttered open. They were unlike any eyes Olivia had ever seen, deep pools of swirling violet that seemed to contain entire galaxies. Their gazes met, and suddenly Olivia's mind was filled with a cascade of images and emotions, fear, pain, desperation, and a plea for help so intense it brought tears to her eyes. The alien woman, for that was surely what she was, pressed a small hand against the inside of the pod. The message was clear: "Release me." Olivia's hands shook as she examined the pod's control panel. This wasn't just a story anymore. This was a living, thinking being asking for her help. Everything she'd been taught about journalistic objectivity told her to step back, to document this and bring it to the proper authorities. But something deeper, more instinctive, told her that would be the wrong choice. The alien's eyes held intelligence and awareness, and genuine fear. Whatever had led to her imprisonment here, Olivia couldn't just walk away. She found what looked like an emergency release mechanism, protected by a glass panel. Breaking it would probably set off alarms, if any still worked in this facility. But as she looked again at the alien's pleading eyes, Olivia realized she'd made her decision the moment she'd seen her. "I hope I'm not making a huge mistake," she said, then brought her flashlight down hard on the glass. The panel shattered, and she pulled the lever beneath. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the pod's surface began to glow brighter, and with a series of clicks and whirs, the front panel began to open. The clear fluid inside drained away, and the alien woman slumped forward. Olivia caught her carefully in her cupped hands, amazed at how light she was, like holding a baby bird. The alien skin was warm to the touch, and Olivia could feel a rapid heartbeat. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Red emergency lights flashed in the corridors outside. The alien woman stirred in Olivia's hands, her wings trembling as she tried to move. More images flooded Olivia's mind, dark figures in hazmat suits, painful tests, a desperate escape attempt thwarted. And underlying it all, a sense of urgency, they needed to leave, now. "Okay," Olivia said, gently tucking the alien into the inner pocket of her jacket. "I've got you. Let's get out of here." She turned and ran for the exit, her footsteps echoing off the walls as the alarms continued to wail. Whatever happened next, her life had just become infinitely more complicated, and infinitely more extraordinary. As she emerged from the facility into the cool night air, Olivia felt the alien shift in her pocket, pressing close to her for warmth. A wave of protectiveness washed over her. She didn't know who this being was or where she came from, but one thing was certain: she wasn't going to let anyone lock her up again. The journey back to her car was a blur of adrenaline and hyper-awareness. Every shadow seemed to hide potential pursuers, every distant sound could be approaching vehicles. But they made it, and as Olivia slid behind the wheel, she felt the alien relaxing slightly. "First things first," Olivia said, starting the engine. "We need to get somewhere safe. Then you and I have a lot to talk about." She felt a gentle touch in her mind, gratitude, trust, and something else. Hope. The headlights cut through the darkness as Olivia drove away from the facility, leaving behind the wailing alarms and her old life. She didn't know it yet, but this was just the beginning of an adventure that would change not only her life but potentially the future of two worlds. The mountain cabin had belonged to Olivia's grandfather, a place of childhood summers and weekend getaways. Now it served as the perfect refuge. Situated on 20 acres of private land, with the nearest neighbor over a mile away, it offered the seclusion they desperately needed. Olivia pulled into the gravel driveway just as dawn was breaking over the mountains. She'd driven through the night, taking back roads and checking constantly to ensure they weren't being followed. The alien, she still couldn't quite believe this was really happening, had remained quiet in her pocket, occasionally sending calming waves of emotion when Olivia's anxiety spiked. Inside the cabin, Olivia carefully lifted her tiny passenger out and placed her on the kitchen counter. In the warm morning light, the alien's appearance was even more extraordinary. Her iridescent skin shifted through subtle shades of opal, and her wings, now dry, resembled delicate stained glass. "Okay," Olivia said, pulling up a stool. "Let's try to figure this out. Can you tell me your name?" The alien's violet eyes met hers, and Olivia's mind filled with the impression of starlight dancing across crystal waters. Along with it came a musical sequence that somehow translated itself in Olivia's mind. "Starlin?" Olivia tried. The alien's face lit up with a smile, and she nodded enthusiastically. "Starlin. Beautiful name." Olivia couldn't help but smile back. "I'm Olivia." Starlin pressed her tiny hand to her chest, then extended it toward Olivia, bowing slightly. More images flowed between them, gratitude, trust, and a deep sense of relief. But there was something else too, urgency, and a shadow of fear. "You're trying to tell me something important, aren't you?" Olivia asked. "About why you were in that facility?" Starlin's expression grew serious. The images that came next were fragmented but intense, a vast ship crossing the stars, a peaceful mission of exploration, then sudden violence, another race of beings, dark and angular, attacking without warning. Starlin's people scattered, seeking refuge on different worlds. But the Dark Ones followed, hunting them across the galaxy. They're looking for you, Olivia realized. Your people, I mean. But why? What do they want? Before Starlin could answer, a wave of exhaustion seemed to hit her. She swayed on her feet, her wings drooping. Olivia quickly scooped her up. The questions can wait. You need rest. She carried Starlin to the living room, where she quickly fashioned a makeshift bed from a soft scarf laid in a small wooden box. Starlin curled up gratefully, her wings folding around her like a shimmering blanket. As the alien slept, Olivia began securing the cabin. She pulled down all the shades, checked the locks, and retrieved her grandfather's old shotgun from the closet. She wasn't sure what good it would do against whoever might be looking for them, but its solid weight was reassuring. She was in the middle of setting up her laptop and satellite phone when a strange humming filled the air. At first, she thought it was coming from outside, but then she realized it was emanating from Starlin. The sleeping alien was glowing softly, and small objects around her, a pen, some loose change, even the box she was sleeping in, had begun to float a few inches off the surface they were resting on. Well, that's new, Olivia muttered, watching in fascination as the items gently orbited around Starlin like tiny planets around a sun. The display lasted for several minutes before everything slowly settled back down. Olivia spent the next few hours alternating between watching over Starlin and trying to piece together what she knew. The facility where she'd found her was connected to a private research company called Quantum Dynamics, but digging deeper revealed layers of shell companies and classified government contracts. Around noon, Starlin awoke. She seemed stronger now, able to hover and fly short distances with her crystalline wings. She explored the cabin with obvious curiosity, examining everything from the coffee maker to the old cuckoo clock on the wall. Her childlike wonder made Olivia laugh, temporarily pushing aside her worries about their situation. They developed a system of communication that combined Starlin's telepathic images with gestures and written words. Olivia learned that Starlin's people were called the Lumini, a race of beings who had mastered the art of manipulating energy and gravity through thought alone. They were peaceful explorers, seeking to learn about other civilizations while remaining hidden from them. But their abilities had attracted the attention of the shadowkin, the Dark Ones from Starlin's earlier vision. This aggressive race sought to capture and study the Lumini, believing their powers could be weaponized. When they attacked, the Lumini scattered across the galaxy, hiding on various planets while trying to find a way to reunite and defend themselves. Starlin had crashed on Earth while fleeing a shadowkin pursuit ship. She'd managed to conceal her actual vessel, but she herself had been captured by human scientists who discovered her. They'd kept her contained while studying her abilities, unaware that their research facility had been infiltrated by shadowkin agents. So there are more of them here, on Earth? Olivia asked, her stomach tightening with anxiety. Starlin nodded, sending an image of dark figures moving through human crowds, completely unnoticed. Unlike the diminutive Lumini, the shadowkin could shift their forms to match the dominant species of whatever world they were on. A sudden noise outside made them both freeze. Olivia moved to the window and carefully peered out through the blinds. A black SUV was parked at the end of the driveway, and two men in dark suits were walking toward the cabin. Time to go, Olivia whispered, quickly gathering their essential belongings. Starlin sent her an image of the back door, along with a suggestion: she could create a diversion. Before Olivia could respond, Starlin raised her tiny hands. The air began to shimmer, and suddenly every electronic device in the cabin came to life. The TV flashed with static, the radio blared, and the lights flickered wildly. Even Olivia's phone began randomly cycling through apps and sending signals. The men outside stopped, their attention drawn to the electromagnetic chaos. Olivia took advantage of their distraction, slipping out the back door with Starlin secure in her jacket pocket. They made it to the tree line just as she heard the front door being broken down. As they disappeared into the forest, Olivia realized their quiet refuge had been just a brief respite. The real challenge was only beginning, and somewhere out there, both human and alien forces were closing in. The mountain forest was both salvation and obstacle as Olivia pushed through the undergrowth, her boots sliding on damp leaves. Behind them, voices echoed through the trees, their pursuers weren't bothering to be quiet anymore. Starlin huddled in Olivia's pocket, her glow dimmed to almost nothing to avoid detection. A fallen log provided momentary cover, and Olivia crouched behind it, trying to catch her breath. She pulled out her phone, no signal, though she wasn't sure if that was due to their remote location or Starlin's earlier electromagnetic burst. The tiny alien touched her hand, sending an image of a cave system threading through the mountain. "There are caves nearby?" Olivia whispered. Starlin nodded, then transmitted another image, herself flying high above the forest, mapping the terrain during her crash landing months ago. The caves led to an underground river system, a potential escape route. The sound of breaking branches grew closer. Olivia peeked over the log and her blood ran cold. The men pursuing them moved wrong, too fluid, too precise. As she watched, one of them stretched its arm to an impossible length to push aside a branch. These weren't human agents. "Shadowkin," she breathed. Starlin trembled in response, confirming her fear. They ran again, Starlin providing telepathic guidance toward the caves. The alien's presence in Olivia's mind grew stronger, and suddenly she could see the terrain as Starlin saw it, overlaid with patterns of energy and gravitational fields. It was disorienting but useful, helping her avoid obstacles she might have otherwise missed. The cave entrance was hidden behind a curtain of vines, barely wide enough for Olivia to squeeze through. Inside, the darkness was absolute until Starlin emerged from her pocket, her natural bioluminescence providing just enough light to see by. "Can they track us in here?" Olivia asked, keeping her voice low. The cave tunnel sloped downward, the sound of running water growing louder as they descended. Starlin's response came in a series of images, the shadowkin's ability to sense energy signatures, particularly those of the Lumini. But the cave system's mineral composition might help mask their presence, especially with the water's interference. They pressed deeper into the cave system, the tunnel occasionally branching. Starlin seemed confident in their direction, leading them toward the sound of rushing water. But as they rounded a bend, they came face to face with a sheer drop, an underground waterfall plunging into darkness. "No way around?" Olivia asked, her voice nearly drowned out by the roar of water. Starlin shook her head, then sent an image that made Olivia's stomach lurch. "They would have to jump." Before she could protest, a cold voice echoed from the tunnel behind them. An impressive attempt at escape. The words were English, but the voice had an unnatural resonance that made Olivia's skin crawl. But ultimately futile. Two figures emerged from the shadows, their human disguises seeming to ripple and shift in Starlin's glow. Their eyes reflected the light like mirrors, and their movements were too smooth, too calculated. "The Lumini female will come with us," the first Shadowkin said. "The human is irrelevant." Starlin flew up to hover at eye level with their pursuers, her tiny form radiating defiance. The cave began to vibrate as she gathered energy around herself, creating a shield of shimmering force that expanded to include Olivia. The Shadowkin launched themselves forward, their forms dissolving into writhing shadows. But Starlin was ready. With a gesture, she sent a pulse of energy that momentarily stunned them, their bodies briefly reverting to their true forms, angular, crystalline structures wrapped in living darkness. "Jump!" Starlin's voice echoed in Olivia's mind, the first time she had communicated in actual words rather than images. "Trust me." Olivia didn't hesitate. She threw herself backward over the edge of the waterfall just as the shadowkin recovered. The sensation of falling was instantaneous and terrifying, but then something extraordinary happened. Starlin's energy field wrapped around them completely, and their descent slowed to a gentle float. They drifted down through the darkness like a dandelion seed on the wind, the waterfall thundering beside them. Above, inhuman shrieks of frustration echoed off the cave walls. The shadowkin couldn't follow without risking destruction in the powerful currents. When they finally reached the bottom, Olivia found herself standing on a narrow stone bank beside an underground river. The water rushed past with incredible force, disappearing into a tunnel that would be impossible for the shadowkin to navigate. That was... Olivia started, then laughed shakily. "Actually, I don't even know what that was. But thank you." She looked at Starlin with new appreciation. "You saved us both." Starlin landed on Olivia's shoulder, clearly exhausted from the energy expenditure. But there was pride in her telepathic touch, along with growing trust and affection. They had faced their first real test together and survived. The moment of relief was short-lived, however. Starlin suddenly stiffened, sending Olivia a urgent warning. The images were chaotic but clear enough. More shadowkin were converging on the area, drawn by the energy discharge from their battle. And they weren't alone. Human military units were mobilizing too, responding to reports of unusual activity in the mountains. "We need to keep moving," Olivia said, eyeing the underground river. "Any chance you know where this leads?" Starlin's response was both encouraging and terrifying. The river would take them to safety, but first they would have to navigate several miles of underground tunnels, some completely submerged. And somewhere along the way, they would find something that would change everything: the hidden location of Starlin's crashed ship. The sound of pursuit echoed again, more distant but growing closer. Olivia squared her shoulders, determination replacing fear. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew two things with absolute certainty: she would protect Starlin with her life, and nothing about her world would ever be the same again. "Well," she said, managing a smile, "I always wanted to write a story that would change the world. I just didn't expect it to involve actual aliens." Starlin's answering laugh chimed like crystal bells in her mind as they set off into the darkness, the first light of a new dawn still hours away. The underground river system was a maze of twisting tunnels and sudden drops, illuminated only by Starlin's ethereal glow. Olivia's world had narrowed to the sound of rushing water and the reassuring presence of her tiny companion. They'd been moving for hours, stopping only when necessary to rest or check their direction. Starlin's energy was clearly depleting, her light would occasionally flicker, and her flight became unsteady. During one of their rest stops, she shared more of her story through a series of vivid mental images. Her people, the Lumini, had been watching Earth for centuries, fascinated by humanity's rapid development and potential. They had planned to make peaceful contact once humanity had reached a certain technological threshold. But the shadowkin had changed everything. They weren't just hunters, they were parasites, consuming the energy and technology of other species to fuel their own evolution. The Lumini's natural abilities made them prime targets, but Earth held something even more valuable: billions of minds capable of generating incredible emotional and psychological energy. "They want to farm us," Olivia realized with horror. "Like batteries." Starlin nodded grimly, showing her visions of other worlds that had fallen to the shadowkin, civilizations reduced to hollow shells, their populations trapped in dreamlike states while their life force was slowly drained away. A distant rumble interrupted their conversation. At first, Olivia thought it was just the river, but Starlin suddenly perked up, her glow intensifying. She tugged at Olivia's sleeve, pointing toward a narrow side tunnel. "Your ship is through there?" Olivia asked. Another rumble shook loose small stones from the ceiling. "Please tell me that's not what I think it is." The images Starlin sent confirmed her fears. The shadowkin were using some kind of energy weapon to try to collapse the cave system, hoping to flush them out. They had to move fast. The side tunnel was barely wide enough for Olivia to squeeze through. She had to wade through knee-deep water, feeling her way along the rough walls. After what felt like an eternity, the tunnel opened into a vast cavern. Starlin flew ahead, her light revealing something that made Olivia gasp. The ship wasn't what she had expected. Rather than metal and machinery, it appeared to be grown from living crystal, its organic curves reminiscent of a massive seashell. It was about the size of a small bus, partially submerged in an underground lake. Despite being damaged, it still hummed with latent energy. "It's beautiful," Olivia breathed. Starlin beamed with pride, then flew to what appeared to be an entrance. The crystal surface rippled like water as she passed through it. After a moment, the entire ship began to glow with the same soft light that Starlin emanated. Olivia approached cautiously, reaching out to touch the ship's surface. It was warm and seemed to pulse under her fingers. Starlin reappeared and gestured for her to follow, showing her how to pass through the crystalline barrier. The interior was even more extraordinary than the outside. What looked like organic technology filled the space, flowing control panels, floating holographic displays, and pulsing energy conduits. Starlin flew to a central platform and placed her hands on a glowing crystal. The ship's systems responded to her touch, coming fully alive. Suddenly, the cavern was filled with a three-dimensional star map. Olivia watched in awe as points of light resolved into planets, galaxies, and swirling energy patterns. Red markers appeared throughout the map, shadowkin invasion forces, far more numerous than they had feared. But something else caught Olivia's attention, a pattern in the shadowkin's movements. "They're not just randomly attacking," she said, studying the holographic display. "They're herding. Pushing different species toward specific points in space." She pointed to where multiple red lines converged. "What's there?" Starlin's answer came in a series of increasingly disturbing images. The shadowkin weren't just conquering, they were building something. A vast structure that spanned multiple star systems, powered by the harvested energy of countless civilizations. Its purpose was unclear, but its scale was terrifying. More rumbling shook the cavern, closer now. Dust and small rocks rained down from above. Starlin frantically began interfacing with the ship's systems, trying to power up its engines. But Olivia could see the damage was too severe, the ship would never fly again. "We need to warn people," Olivia said. "Both your people and mine." "But how?" "The government won't believe me, and the shadowkin have probably already infiltrated key positions." Starlin paused in her work, then turned to Olivia with an expression of both determination and apology. What she proposed next was incredibly dangerous. She could use the ship's remaining power to create a psychic broadcast, sharing the truth directly into the minds of both humans and any hidden Lumini on Earth. But doing so would alert every shadowkin in the hemisphere to their location. How long would it take? Olivia asked, hearing more crashes echo through the tunnels. Starlin held up 3 tiny fingers. 3 minutes to change the world forever. 3 minutes to alert both species to the danger they faced. 3 minutes until every enemy in range would know exactly where they were. Olivia took a deep breath, then nodded. "Do it." Starlin placed her hands back on the crystal, which began to pulse with increasing intensity. The ship's hum rose to a crescendo as energy built up around them. Olivia could feel something building in her mind, images, knowledge, warnings all compressed and ready to broadcast. The cavern shook more violently. Their time was running out. The shadowkin were getting closer, and somewhere above, human military forces were likely moving into position as well. But as Olivia watched Starlin work, she felt something she hadn't expected: hope. Whatever happened next, the truth would be known. Earth wouldn't fall into darkness unaware. And maybe, just maybe, two very different species would find a way to stand together against the gathering storm. The psychic broadcast hit like a tidal wave of truth, sweeping across minds and borders without discrimination. In that instant, millions of humans experienced firsthand the beauty of the Lamini civilization, the horror of the shadowkin threat, and the desperate need for unity. At the same time, every hidden Lamini on Earth felt the call, a signal that the time for hiding was over. But Olivia and Starlin had no time to witness the immediate aftermath. The cavern was collapsing around them, and the ship's crystal structure was beginning to crack under the strain of the broadcast. Worse, dark shapes were materializing in the shadows, shadowkin, stripped of their human disguises by the energy surge, their true forms like living obsidian shot through with veins of crimson light. "Any chance this thing has weapons?" Olivia asked, backing away from the advancing figures. Starlin's response was unexpected. She flew to Olivia and pressed her tiny hands against her temples. Suddenly, Olivia's perception shifted dramatically. She could see the energy field Starlin manipulated, could feel the gravitational forces flowing around them like rivers of invisible power. "You're showing me how to fight them," Olivia realized. It wasn't just knowledge, Starlin was temporarily sharing her abilities, creating a bridge between their species in the most literal way possible. The first shadowkin launched itself forward, its crystalline form fragmenting into razor-sharp shards. Olivia raised her hands instinctively, and to her amazement, a barrier of pure force materialized. The shadowkin crashed against it, momentarily stunned. "Okay," Olivia said, a smile spreading across her face. "This is new." What followed was unlike any battle in human history. Olivia and Starlin moved in perfect synchronization, their shared power holding the shadowkin at bay. When one would attack, the other would defend. They used the cave's natural features against their enemies, redirecting underground streams and collapsing tactical sections of the ceiling. But they were badly outnumbered, and Olivia could feel the borrowed power taking its toll. Her nose had started bleeding, and her vision was blurring at the edges. Starlin wasn't faring much better, her glow was dimming, her movements becoming erratic. Just when it seemed they couldn't hold out any longer, a new sound cut through the chaos, the whir of helicopter rotors and the unmistakable thud of military boots. But these weren't the same forces that had been hunting them. These soldiers moved with purpose, their weapons modified with crystals that pulsed with familiar light. "Down," a voice commanded, and Olivia pulled Starlin close, dropping to the ground as energy beams lanced through the cavern. The shadowkin screeched as the modified weapons disrupted their crystalline forms, forcing them to retreat into the shadows. A figure rushed forward, a woman in tactical gear with colonel's insignia. But what caught Olivia's attention was the tiny Lamini perched on her shoulder, directing the troops with precise telepathic commands. "Looks like your broadcast worked," the colonel said, helping Olivia up. "I'm Colonel Rebecca Hayes. This is Celestia. We've been working together in secret for months, preparing for this moment. There are others like us around the world, humans and Lamini who found each other and chose to trust." More soldiers poured in, securing the area. But it wasn't just military personnel, civilians were arriving too, each accompanied by a Lamini partner. Scientists, engineers, teachers, artists, people from all walks of life who had been secretly protecting their tiny allies while working to uncover the shadowkin threat. "It's happening everywhere," Hayes explained as medics checked Olivia and Starlin. "Your broadcast broke through decades of fear and secrecy. The Lamini are revealing themselves, and for every frightened reaction, there are 100 people reaching out to help. Humanity isn't perfect, but we're better than the shadowkin thought." Starlin shared a vision with Olivia. All across the globe, similar scenes were playing out. Hidden Lamini ships were powering up, their advanced technology finally merging with human innovation. The shadowkin's carefully laid plans were unraveling as their infiltrators were exposed and driven out by the combined efforts of both species. But it wasn't over. The shadowkin's vast structure still waited in deep space, and their forces would regroup for another attack. Earth would need to prepare, to unite not just with the Lumini but with other worlds threatened by the darkness. So, Olivia said, looking at Starlin, who now glowed with renewed strength, ready to help me write the story that changes everything? Starlin's answer filled her mind with images of hope, humans and Lumini working together, sharing knowledge and abilities, building a future neither species could achieve alone. It wouldn't be easy. There would be fear and resistance to overcome, and the shadowkin would return. But they would face it together. 1 month later, Olivia sat at her desk, finishing the article that would formally introduce the Lumini to the world. Starlin hovered nearby, adding her own perspective through their now permanent telepathic link. Outside, the sun was setting on a changed Earth. Lumini ships glided between skyscrapers, their crystal hulls catching the light like massive jewels. Human scientists worked alongside their tiny allies in new research centers, developing defenses against the coming storm. But more importantly, ordinary people were forging bonds with the Lumini, learning to see past physical differences to the intelligence and soul within. For every official alliance between governments and alien representatives, there were thousands of smaller connections, friendships and partnerships that proved love and understanding could transcend the boundaries of worlds. Olivia felt Starlin's gentle touch on her shoulder and smiled. Their private war in a hidden cave had sparked something extraordinary, not just the merger of two civilizations, but the awakening of humanity to its place in a larger universe. The shadowkin had meant to divide and conquer, but instead, they had united potential allies against them. As night fell over the city, countless tiny lights could be seen in windows and gardens, Lumini living among humans, no longer hiding. Their combined glow rivaled the stars, a testament to what could be achieved when fear gave way to trust, and differences became strengths instead of barriers. It was just the beginning of a much larger story, but as Olivia and Starlin watched the lights together, they knew one thing with certainty: whatever challenges lay ahead, neither humanity nor the Lumini would face them alone.